My name is Tom Kurtz. I am with SAP. I'm specifically in our digital supply chain area focused on asset and service management. So anything from maintenance execution to what we're going to talk about today, the convergence of EAM and APM asset performance management, also with field service management, and some of the larger things that we're doing around service management overall. Today, the topic of asset management we want to really focus on today, and one of the main reasons we wanted to do that at an event like this, I think the more of these type of third-party shows that we go to, we realize obviously SAP's been around for quite a while. People know SAP as an ERP company. They even know us from a plant maintenance or maintenance execution company, but we're doing a lot more in that area. We want to make sure we have the opportunity to not only educate here, ask a few questions. So I'm going to talk for about 15 minutes up front, and then I actually brought a colleague here, Jeff Witt, who's from one of our customers, Owens Corning, and he's going to talk about what he's doing specifically with some of the concepts and solutions that we're going to be talking about. So on that note, I have probably about 5 or 6 slides, but 3 really core slides. I want to talk about some of the challenges and trends we're seeing. I want to talk about how that translates into capabilities that we know that we're seeing that our customers need, and then how that translates to those capabilities translate into solutions. So going through these one by one, you'll hear me talk a lot about closing the loop between maintenance execution and asset strategy. And what we mean by that is a lot of our customers are having very reactive or static maintenance policies that they have today. And one of the reasons there is because they don't know any better. They have set maintenance plans. It's maybe set on a schedule. It's set on an amount of time. Maybe it's even set running to failure. And so they have these static plans, and they want to do more dynamic. They want to be able to look at their assets and segment them differently. Beyond that, just the world of maintenance execution and asset strategy, they also need to be able to integrate that beyond just asset management, take away the silos to the other parts of the organization, finance, inventory, materials management, and so forth. We're seeing a lot of changes in the roles themselves. So you hear terms like outcome-based services. You hear terms like equipment as a service. We're talking to companies that are manufacturing products, and they don't want to just sell a piece of equipment to their end operator. They actually want to provide more end-to-end services along the way as well. Many companies can't connect efficiently. They have older equipment. They haven't figured out how to do sensors yet. Maybe they are still getting to do sensors. They are capturing that information, but they're not accurately using that data. We've talked to some customers this week like that. I capture a lot of data, but I'm not actively doing anything with it. We hear a lot today about resources, constrained resources. In the maintenance world, we have people retiring. In the post-COVID world, we have people that have gone on to do other things. So a lot of constrained resources that we always have, and increasing costs associated with that. And finally, just the changing worker dynamics, again, along those same lines of being able to attract the right people and keep those skill sets in place. What is the role that process and technology can play, not only to be sustainable, but to keep worker safety at the same time? So as we look at some of these key challenges, we start to ask ourselves at SAP, how do we create a portfolio with the right kind of capabilities? So what are those capabilities? The first piece here, let's go back, and these are going to match back to those areas that we just talked about, those challenges. So again, there's that term, closed loop strategy, planning and execution across asset performance management. So I heard a customer a couple years ago at an event like this say these exact words: we don't want to just maintain our equipment anymore. We want to manage the entire life cycle of our assets. And so what that means is they want to be able to understand up front what is the risk and criticality of certain assets. Can I segment assets differently based on that? Based on the assessments that I do, can I generate recommendations? Can those recommendations then be fed directly into my maintenance plans and my maintenance solutions? So that really bringing that closed loop process within the asset management world. Secondly, we talked about being able to have that closed loop asset processes, being able to integrate across and break down the silos across not only the rest of your supply chain, your logistics, your engineering, and so forth, but also the rest of your ERP. So the finance, I want to be able to connect to procurement. I want to be able, I have a spare parts consideration I need to do. I have worker situation. What does that mean from a contingency workforce crowdsourcing? What does that mean from an HR perspective? And then finally, outside of my enterprise, so the asset management's one level, the enterprise is a second level. What about outside the enterprise? We continue to see the shrinking of the globe. We continue to see a lot of companies who are needing to work with companies outside of their own company, of their own enterprise, i.e. the network that they deal with, whether you're a manufacturer working with operators, service provider, sourcing for an operator, and so forth. So we want to be able to collaborate and have network capabilities as well. You hear the term Industry 4.0, you're hearing that this week, artificial intelligence and so forth. We want to be able to have that ability to ingest data, to be able to run analytics against that data, to provide customers the ability to develop their own machine learning algorithms as well. The getting into the people side of it that we talked about, again, being able to optimize maintenance and service. We talk a lot this week about sustainability, not only the cost, especially if all you have to do is look out the window to the nearest gas station to understand the fuel prices. So being able to optimize not only the route side of it, but be able to reduce emissions as a part of that. And finally, empowering users with mobility. We'll touch on that here in a moment, but we're seeing a lot of cases of customers who not only want to automate their maintenance processes from a cost perspective, they want to be able to improve that from just a convenience perspective. Technicians that don't have to come in and get all their jobs at the beginning of the day and then go out and paper-based source it or execute it all and then come back. They want to be able to leave in their truck directly, be able to run all their jobs, and be able to have that centrally stored. So this picture on the right, if you stop by our booth, you may have seen me pull this up or describe it, but this is really the convergence of everything we just talked about. So this is how we try to represent it from a capabilities perspective. So the bottom half there, it says Enterprise Asset Management and Service. This is really the SAP that most of you probably are very familiar with. It's the planning and orchestration. So maintenance notifications get created. I want to be able to create a work order from that. Or even on the customer field service side, I want to be able to have an initial service request made that translates into a service order and so forth. Scheduling and dispatching. So now you start to get into the scheduling not only of the work, but of the people, and how do you dispatch them appropriately. The execution and reporting, again, from either a field service or a maintenance perspective. How do you actually do the work execution, and how do you run analytics on that? Also not forgetting about environmental health and safety. So you'll see this in the manufacturing side of some of our solutions. Those of you that might be running some of our manufacturing solutions might be using things like work clearance or other EH&S solutions to keep the workers safe in the plants, but you also have the technician considerations when it comes to asset management. And the top piece then, you see more of what I was touching on with asset performance management. So this goes back to that individual's comment. I don't want to just manage, I don't want to just maintain my equipment. I want to be able to manage the entire life cycle. So I want to be able to do asset strategy. I want to take, if I have 10,000 pieces of equipment, distinct asset classes, distinct pieces of equipment, I don't want to necessarily maintain them all the same way. I don't necessarily want to treat them all the same way. I was talking to one individual this week who they have one piece of equipment that they keep one in stock globally because the piece of equipment costs about $300,000. So that how you treat that maintenance of that piece of equipment is going to be very different than you can to something that you either can source very cheaply from a spare parts perspective that doesn't cause downtime, that doesn't cause risk and safety issues and so forth. So being able to look at that asset strategy appropriately. And then asset health, getting into the IoT side of things, being able to not only develop these maintenance plans, but to be able to execute them on different types of facets, including predictive maintenance. And then on the outside there with asset network and collaboration, that's what we touched on in terms of business networks, being able to connect with parties outside of your organization. This slide, we won't spend a lot of time on. It's the same capabilities we touched on, but I wanted to show this because this then takes the capabilities and starts to translate them into the different solutions out there. So you'll hear a lot, if you were to Google SAP Business Network, you'll see different network capabilities, different cloud-based subscription services that we have. So there's Business Network for asset management. There is Business Network for procurement, Business Network for supply chain, Business Network for logistics. So you'll see different business network capabilities there. Asset performance management, we have a solution called SAP Asset Performance Management. There are two solutions that you may have heard about, SAP Asset Strategy and Performance Management and SAP Predictive Asset Insights. Those exist today. Those capabilities are getting consolidated into SAP Asset Performance Management. SAP Service and Asset Manager is our mobile product, and then towards the bottom half of the slide, you start to get into the core ERP capabilities. So SAP S/4HANA Asset Management is our work execution system. We have asset management for resource scheduling, which is what we do for our resources. SAP Field Service Management is our scheduling and dispatching solution for field service scenarios. And then you see some of the others on the bottom there in terms of EH&S, some industry solutions and such. In terms of how this translates, I won't go through all these different pieces here, but I did want to highlight, these are either from benchmarking that we've done or customer comments that we've received, but you see these are some of the key metrics that a lot of our customers look at in terms of generating success. I'm able to reduce warranty claims. I'm able to lower my maintenance costs. I'm able to increase asset utilization. The one in the middle there, let's see if I do this right, the 500K here, this is an interesting, I'll acknowledge the very back of the envelope, but what we're starting to see with our customers using our field service solutions are when they're able to optimize the routes that I talked about earlier, and you multiply that out. If you're saving X number of miles per day times X number of resources times X number of locations and so forth, you start to see, from a cost perspective, there's very real benefits, but from a sustainability and reduced emissions perspective, it gets very interesting as well. So, and then this slide here, I guess there was an automatic advance there, but this is for some further information. If you just go to sap.com/IAM, you'll see there's some customer testimonials and some other pieces, but this screenshot that I grabbed here, you can look and go into any of those blue boxes or links that can take you into more specific information about those specific solutions. Now, having said all of that, it's time for a little fireside chat. Because Fireside, June, Orlando all go together splendidly. And at this time, I'd like to invite Jeff up there because what we have found, and I'm sure everybody would attest in this audience, that you can listen to me for 45 minutes, but that's not very interesting. So I'm gonna let you listen to me for 15 minutes, but what I wanna do is bring Jeff up, give him a moment to introduce himself, and we're going to go back and forth a little bit and talk about what they're doing at Owens Corning, what he's doing specifically, and bringing some of what we just talked about to life. So Jeff, with that, could you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, good afternoon. My name is Jeff Wade. I'm with Owens Corning. We operate 110 facilities around the world. And I've been leading the asset health program since 2019. We were looking for something that we could do at the enterprise level. We were not looking for a customized solution that would be deployed differently at every plant. And so we went to market, we went to bid, we looked at a number of different vendors, ended up selecting the IAM suite of tools. That's the Asset Health, the Asset Strategy. And we challenged SAP and our integrator to do a very quick POC. So we gave them 90 days to implement the tool, and then we evaluated it for 90 days. We found we found a lot of low-hanging fruit in that POC and decided to continue. So we've moved on from the POC at one plant on one focus area. We've moved on to complete the pilot, which was the balance of the plant. From there, we began deploying plant by plant. So as plants became maximized with their current infrastructure and they wanted to move into more condition-based monitoring, they wanted to move into more predictive analytics, we moved into this plant model of deploying one at a time. We've since changed that, and I call it deployment version 2. We've changed that quite a bit, where we're not doing it plant by plant anymore. Now it's use case. if we figure out a problem in one plant and we solve their pump issue or we solve their oven issue, we now just take that, and now that's our gold standard. We take that and then we just deploy it across the balance of the assets, no matter where that plant is. So we had two main objectives starting out. We had 60,000 PMs in our system in North America and Europe. We also have an Asia instance. That's not counting Asia. So just in North America and Europe, we had 60,000 PMs kicking out hundreds of thousands of orders a year just to do our PMs, all on a calendar basis. Every 3 months do this, every week do this inspection. It was, if you do an audit of that process, it wasn't terribly effective, right? So we wanted to move to condition-based. We knew we wanted to do that. We knew that condition-based was just a baby step, right? That's just the first step. I mean, it's nothing that we can't really do today with our historian or HMI or anything like that. But taking the tools to the next step, we wanted to do anomaly detection. So don't predict the failure for me, but just tell me if something looks odd. We just wanted the computer to be telling us that this pattern looks different than what you told me normal run state was, and we thought that would be a value add for our install base. Eventually, we are going to move into predictive, but that is still a little bit down the road. Our second main objective was to pull these best practices. So we've been on a TPM journey for the last 5-6 years, and we wanted to pull all of those best practices up into a single system that we could distribute those best practices then across the board. So we've been using models to bring those documents and those findings and those data models and everything up to that gold standard level, and then we deploy those to like or similar assets across the organization. And that's been pretty successful. So a couple examples I'm going to go through. One is just our first kind of big find with online vibration monitoring. And then the second one is failure curve analytics. So our equipment is old, like a lot of companies. It was not installed with a lot of sensors. So we've been retrofitting, and this was a plant in Arkansas that we had some Emerson sensors, we had some Proaxian wireless sensors installed, and this was an early find that saved the plant about $200,000. And this was a case study that I wrote up, and we advertised the heck out of this because it was a fun story, it was a good find, it was a good catch, and it kind of proved out the technology. And so we put this on blogs. Every presentation had this in it. This was what kind of got our program up off the ground.
Sorry to interrupt. Real quickly, out of curiosity, how quickly did you come across that? Was that something pretty quickly, or was it after you got to know the system a little bit better?
Yeah, I'm not sure the dates on here, but it was probably within the first several months.
Okay, so pretty quick.
Yeah, and this was the reason that this was such a significant find was that the motor and the bearing and the roller, to change this one in the asset would take a day of downtime to crib up some rigging to get that roller out, then perform the maintenance, then reinsert it. It's quite an ordeal. So it was a good catch that we found this, and we were able to limp along to the next down day and take care of it during a planned down event instead of an unplanned down event. This was a different one. This is a good, so this was a gradual increase. This is a motor, and what we're measuring here is motor load. And it was going over 100% utilization. And the failure curve on this motor was known to the plant. That motor lasts 12 months. Year in, year out, that motor lasts 12 months. Nobody ever really sat down to do the analysis of why is this motor only lasting 12 months? It should last years. So we were able to not only detect and prevent a failure, but then we were able to do a deeper analysis into the root cause using some of the tools and some of the data, and we found that there was a direct correlation between water headbox weight and the load on the motor. and that if we kept the head box weight at a certain level, the motor load didn't peak. And so by controlling the set point on the process side, we were now influencing the asset side, and we were able to keep this in control. So that's just another example of how we use the data. And then we were able to take this, and because this plant has 7 sister plants, we were able to take this learning and then, again, raise that up to the gold standard model and extend it to all 7 of those facilities.
So let me ask this question before we go on to I know you have one more slide, but talk a little bit. So early on the first slide, you mentioned some of the reasons you were thinking of doing this, and you wanted to move from calendar-based to condition-based and so forth. How did you make, we don't have to go into the details of specifically SAP, but why the software side as opposed to, I mean, you have, like you said, different hardware vendors, different equipment capabilities. I'm sure there's a lot of solutions there. Why did you want to centralize it all?
Yeah, so the reason is that we have a very small corporate team. And so to support 110 manufacturing facilities with the way we were staffed at the time, it wasn't practical for us to go with trying not to name anything, but anything that's down in the plant at the control layer. That would have required too much customization, too many resources. We would have needed to identify vendors and local support across multiple continents. Mm-hmm. It would have been too much. So we were really looking for an enterprise level solution to do our condition monitoring and bring the standard industry best practices. So, I don't have to have my maintenance departments trying to figure out, how to do machine learning. SAP's already built the machine learning into the tool. We just need to populate the data sets, and then it scores our asset health. It does our probability of failures. It does our failure curves. So that has already been built for us. We don't have to recreate the wheel.
Got it. And did you, when you say that this is where you were wanting to go, was that pretty universal, or did you have, when I talk to some companies, a lot of times I'll get we're thinking about moving beyond run to failure or calendar-based, schedule-based, but we don't have the support yet, or we don't have.
Oh, no, we knew.
Everybody was on board.
Yeah, we knew. So just bare my soul a little bit here, but
bare what you're comfortable with.
If you open up any of our inspection PMs, they're in ECC. They're a little sparse. They're a little lacking for detail. They're lacking for quantitative data. They're lacking for measurements and standards. So, it's go inspect this motor, go inspect this pump, And so we knew that sort of inspection probably came because of a failure. And so somebody said, well, the root cause says we need to have an action item is to go create a PM to inspect this every 3 months, because that's the smallest denominator of the failure curve. And so now we have 60,000 PMs in the system that aren't really terribly effective. So we knew we wanted to go to condition monitoring, and that was the impetus of doing vibration and motor circuit and ultrasonic and putting those sensors in place, and then using intelligent asset management to do the analysis for us.
That's great. That actually reminds me of something when we were talking before. You had mentioned that, so you've been running plant maintenance or the maintenance execution part of SAP for a while. There's functionality there you're using. There's some functionality you might not be using yet. And if I remember our conversation correctly, one of the things you mentioned is, as you started to use some of this functionality, you recognized that, hey, maybe I could do this in plant maintenance, but I can also do this. So that told me that that closed loop that we talked about earlier, the ability to have what you're doing in maintenance execution talk to, and I know it's getting better in this area, but the ability to do that closed loop was important to you as well.
I'm sure if so this slide kind of shows all of those hard hats along the indicator chart. Mm-hmm. Those reflect work orders. So I'm able to go in and I can see the work order history overlaid with the real-time process data. So I can go in and I can see, okay, I can see, in the middle of this chart here, I can see a hard hat. And so I know they did a work order, and that's the spike then that tripped this indicator, early April or August. Can't quite read it, but so we could explain that anomaly. We know we don't have to go investigate that. So having that asset history, the documentation, the strategy, the optimized PMs, all done on the asset strategy side, but then bringing in the PAI or the predictive asset insights, bringing that real-time data in to overlay on top of that maintenance history is what really kind of changed the game, because we don't have that, in Process Explorer, historians or HMIs, that we don't generally have the maintenance history or the maintenance documentation tied to those real-time readings. So in this module, we're able to see both in the same. So I can explain away that one spike, but then you can see the alerts are coming in, and I probably am hiding the work order that we did to correct this issue. But so you can see all of that's tied together. The alerts that come out of the system are tied back to SAP in the form of notifications. So if I receive an alert here and we centrally analyze this alert and decide that we need to turn it into a notification, we can do that, and then it would go to the next daily approval meeting for the maintenance department in that facility. Else, if the plant has a reliability engineer or they have process technicians that are monitoring this data, they can do the same thing. They can take this alert, they can assign it to somebody else for investigation, they can assign it to a controls person, they can turn it into a notification, track it through its entire life cycle. We also use this to track focus improvement projects. So a lot of our finds turn into other projects, right? So the motor and the head box. Well, now we realize that we have to monitor the head box a lot more closely, so that turned into a project to better sensor that so that we have better control over that.
Wonderful. I think you had one more too, right? Yeah.
Okay, so just wanted to throw a few numbers out here and then see if there's any questions. So we did turn about 1,800 PMs so far into condition-based. So rather than just doing an inspection once a week, every other week, once a month, whatever, we have converted those over to at least runtime, but in many cases, more condition-based. So we're waiting for the asset to tell us that there's something going on that we have to go take action on. We've deployed about 2,000 sensors so far. That is rapidly accelerating. We've spent a lot of time standardizing on our sensors. So we trialed a lot of different sensors, and we've kind of got some standards now that we can source globally and install. So we've got one or two for each type of PDM technology so that we don't have plants just going out and buying all of these disparate systems that we're going to have a hard time connecting back to our systems. With only one or two, we can set up these standard integrations, and we can be up and running with a new plant within hours sometimes, instead of months for integration.
To go that approach to do the wireless sensors that you can deploy on the existing equipment, was that an easy decision? Because I know a lot of companies have that same struggle. It's older equipment, they're not ready to, as they change it out, they can get more embedded equipment.
It depends on the use case, right? So a lot of our environments are hot, wet, dirty, nasty environments. No, the wireless sensors don't work there. They will fall off almost immediately. So it just kind of depends. Sometimes we have to install real ruggedized sensors, which would be hardwired. And then other times, other areas we can get away with the wireless ones, which are quick, easy. If they break, no big deal.
Yeah.
We've got 11 plants so far using both modules. So asset strategy is more of the FMEAs. It's the PM optimization. It's the reliability-centered maintenance, it's checklists, that sort of reliability functions, and then predictive asset insights is the...
So on the asset strategy piece, like with FMEA, is FMEA what you're using?
Yep.
Okay, so is that, were you already doing that and you just wasn't automated yet?
Yeah.
Or, okay.
Yeah, so we did FMEAs in Excel,
Yeah.
right? So now we keep a master database of FMEAs in Isograph, and then we integrate them back here so that they can be used in prioritizing the work.
And are you seeing the benefits of having that more integrated?
Yeah, so but now we get a reliability, what is it called? RPN, or reliability, somebody help me, RPN, risk priority number. we get a risk priority number now on every notification work order.
Okay.
So now we can sort by, okay, you told me this was an A critical asset. Your FMEA said that this is a critical failure mode. So it takes those into account and then assigns a number so we can sort descending, and then, okay, this helps the planner now prioritize what to schedule.
Awesome.
We've got 43 of those gold standards models. They're not complete. They are always going to be a work in progress. They're always going to be changing. But we have a single source of truth now for maintenance and reliability. And in the future, it'll be for engineering as well, that we will maintain these gold standard models in APM so that will be the source of that information. And then
I love the last one.
Yeah, I consider that, probably our biggest accomplishment is in the last 6 months or so, there's been a lot of pull, a lot. And it's coming both from the SMEs and the people in the plants that want to do more and more and more. And it's also coming from executives saying, how can you go faster? So we've been spending a lot of time at this conference looking at tools and talking to people about, how did you go faster? How do you scale to 110 facilities at once instead of doing one deployment at a time?
Which, on that note, actually, that reminds me of one other thing we talked about is at some point you looked, and maybe this is part of your rollout or deployment 2.0, you talked about it. You went plant by plant, but then at a certain point you shifted and said, we actually can do this scenario by scenario or use case by use case, right? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, we went use cases. So one of the things I really like about this product is that it's based on number of assets, right? So it's not by named users. Thank God, right? So we just subscribe to the cloud for a certain number of assets. SAP doesn't care what plant it's in, and deploying it, because it is cloud-based and the integration to our ERP is through Cyclo. So that's an easy integration through Cloud Connector. So our on-prem system communicates seamlessly with the APM cloud. We can deploy quickly. So we had a plant in Georgia that wanted to test a combination of 4 or 5 different PDM technologies all on one dashboard. Cool, we can do that. So instead of them having to go into their motor circuit tool and look at the data there, and then go into their ultrasonic tool and view their data there, some of this in the cloud, some of it's on-prem, we can combine all of that into a single view rather quickly using just the standard integrations that we've already built, published, are live, they're industrialized. Now we can just go more quickly. So we don't have to go plant by plant. That's how we used to deploy SAP to new facilities, was just plant at a time. Mm-hmm. We don't have to do that anymore. So that limitation's been removed. We can go and do use case, solve the problem once and then just repeat it across the network.
Wonderful. So with that, we have another 7 or 8 minutes. I could continue to ask some questions, but we do have a microphone roving the floor. I want to make sure if anybody wants an opportunity to either ask me anything from an SAP perspective or Jeff anything from the deployment experience they've had.
I'm just going to be really kind, so I'm not actually asking a question. I just want to say, as another Owens Corning employee who actually works very closely with Jeff, phenomenal job. The tools work really well for us. But, linking into something you said, and I don't know how many of you caught it, but there's this codification of knowledge in the right place. So sometimes I do process health. And sometimes you find things in process health side. And, I could build alerts in my world and I can have it going there, but where's the right place to put that information, and how that enables it to be communicated and codified in the right place? And we've found some things, and we've taken from the process side, put it in the asset side where it actually belongs. It's actually improved on the model because it actually learns and trends over time. And I think that's really critical. And like you mentioned before with the forming side, was that vice versa, right? Here you've learned how this asset performed, identified changes in the process, and we're able to take that back in the process health side and codify that knowledge where it belongs, so that the people have the right understanding of how do we best run our operations.
Awesome, thank you. He didn't make you nervous when he got. got the
Well,
microphone,
yeah,
did he?
kinda. He went first. He scared me.
Yeah, hi, this is Rich Gould from Covestro. When you went from calendar-based to condition-based maintenance, right? Like you mentioned even runtime at first, simple stuff, right?
Yep.
Just getting process information to help drive your PMs. Are you doing the event detection in SAP too? Right? When it's time to do a PM, that's an event, right? Are you using the maintenance plan module to do that? Are you doing that outside of SAP? I'm really
No.
interested in how you do that.
No, we do. Yeah, we're a heavy user of EAM. So pretty much every feature of the planning,
Okay.
the work ID, the planning and scheduling features, the work execution and the work closeout features in EAM we use. One thing that I will say about that particular process is if you want to see somebody panic, go tell your planner that you're going to change all his PMs. Because the look on their face the first time they knew what was coming, that we were going to change all of their PMs that they've worked with for years, their babies, they know when they come out, they've got it perfected for the year. Now we're going to change them to, they're just going to come out when we need to do them instead of when you told them to be done. So that was a bit of change management.
I was just going to say, how'd that change management go?
Yeah.
So,
And I assume with EAM that was scalable, right? It was pretty easy once you decided.
Yeah, we have a very thorough and standardized reliability work process that is the same across all 110 facilities. So when we make a process change or we make a system change, it will affect everybody, but it is the same plant to plant. We have never been staffed to do individual plant customizations, so all of our plants operate the same.
Now, if they're worried about job security, that's one thing, but the volume's going to go down so greatly, I'm not really sure what their concerns were.
Well, it was just a little bit of panic, but the idea here is that we are freeing up the planners and the maintenance technicians from that tedious inspection work, which maybe was less effective, and having them do more value-added tasks.
and now down the road, they're seeing and agreeing with that?
It's a difficult thing to measure. It's a difficult thing
Yeah.
to measure.
You mentioned that there was a 2,000 wireless sensors in the last slide
Yes, sir.
to keep the asset inventory. Is that like a new install that you had to do just to keep the inventory asset? And was it wireless infrastructure that you had to build in the plant to support those 2,000 devices?
Yes. So the censoring of the assets is independent of this solution. So a lot of times they'll go in together, but they're not necessarily dependent on each other. So it depends on the plant's readiness for the wireless network, whether they have the access points where we can get the sensor data to our network. So sometimes there's a delay in the time we implement PAI or ASPM and the time when sensors go in. So one of our Netherlands plants was like that, where we started off with some of the ASPM focus, and then at a later time we came back with more of the sensors as they got ready for the new access points for the wireless sensors.
Hey, Chris Carlins with Rain. Following up on the question from before about how you're handling maintenance difference and not having to go out and inspect things all the time. I imagine that might have freed up some bandwidth. We have seen other places where they're going with autonomous maintenance, getting the operators more involved because they're trying to free up that maintenance talent. And I wonder if this day and age where talent is hard to find, if that's actually been a crucial thing for you, because maybe it's hard to find that type of maintenance person and now you're able to use them where you need to. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, this solution goes hand in hand with our Worker of the Future campaign. Just having this sort of data and alerts on my phone changes things. I can now see in real time and get alerts when something that we've been monitoring as a focus improvement project happened in a plant, 500 miles away. That goes for our regional reliability engineers. It goes for our subject matter experts in world headquarters and our R&D centers. So now we're able to attack problems with more people outside of the four walls of the plant still working in partnership with them, but bringing additional resources to help. So it's starting to work that way. But it's very much a process.
Any other questions as we get near our time together? If there's, oh, we got one.
Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. Nico Rosner, Covestro. I was just wondering, with the introduction of S/4HANA, will you have more interfaces supported, for example, MQTT, for interfacing to SAP?
So the short answer is yes, SAP S/4HANA, the new ERP system, well, not so new anymore, but that we are continuously updating that to have more interfaces to whatever systems we have. So APIs and certain integration exists now. What we're seeing in a lot of cases is the extension of those. So you'll hear the term "keep the core clean." So you'll see a lot more of encouraging customers to leave ERP the same, but then be able to extend that through the platform of service we have with which is business transformation platform, or business technology platform. So you'll see either cloud applications that SAP has that are built on that, or customers and partners are starting to build and extend functionality that way and connect functionality that way.
Yeah, and so the two modules we purchased or are licensed in the cloud. Below that, there are two other layers. One is Leonardo, and below that is the IoT system. The IoT system is the ingestion of the time series data, and that system does allow MQTT. It does allow REST. We chose REST because we use a middleware to kind of aggregate all of our data sources, and then we just send it once. But yeah, MQTT and IoT cockpit work together.
And then that platform, so I use the term platform as a service. What we're seeing with a lot of our customers are they already have a relationship with, from a data management or an infrastructure perspective, with hyperscalers. So we can either host these solutions ourselves or work with hyperscalers to do that. All right, well, I think that about wraps us up. So thank you so much, everybody. And of course, Jeff, thank you.
My pleasure.
If any more questions, we'll stick around for a few minutes. I believe there's a 2 o'clock in here, but we can huddle outside if anybody has any follow-up questions, or come see us at the SAP booth before we close up today. Thanks, everyone. Have a great afternoon.